Hey, all, welcome to ShareTreck. This is Raj here, and with me I have Sandeep. And again, we
Right.
thought we will just have a common discussion for what to expect next week, because the big question, I think, is the bull rally over? Are we going to see further drops in next week, or are we still going to have more growth? So that's what Sandeep and I plan to discuss. So with that said, let's get started. Welcome back, friends. Hey, Sandeep, what is your thoughts about the market going forward? What's going to happen next week?
Well, next week it is a very busy week, Raj. I like to show our viewers something
Sure.
which is an economic calendar. You can access this for free. I use Trading Economics Calendar, and we don't have a quiet week next week. We've got CPI inflation data, which is going to be huge, especially because now it seems like the market is thinking we have even fewer rate cuts than the very optimistic market once priced in. We have CPI, but we also have PPI month over month coming in as well, in addition to a bunch of bond offerings. So it seems like it's going to be a very busy week, Raj.
Yeah, whenever inflation data comes in, it's a potential for a reset. It
Yeah.
could be a positive or a negative catalyst. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And also, we had been in a market where, for a point of time, bad news was considered good news for the market. Economically, bad news seemed to boost the market. For example, if the unemployment rate came higher, it boosted the market because the thought was Fed would reduce interest rates and Fed would become more dovish. So I don't know whether we have come to a stage where bad news for economy is bad news for market. So that's also another thing I think we have to watch out for.
Yeah.
But rightly pointed out, the calendar has got a whole lot of things. So one way of looking at this, Sandeep, is that you take care of all the fundamentals of the economy, and I'll talk more about the technical, right? And then together we'll try to tackle this question and see if we can come up with a conclusion. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll let you take the wheel, Raj. I'll
Okay. But I don't want
I
to
will.
bias your opinion, okay? So I may not be right with what I'm saying, but I don't want to bias your opinion. So okay.
Oh, okay.
So
I
let's
will.
do this. I'll
I
share my
will.
screen.
I will
Yeah.
consider this not financial advice and just for entertainment and for consideration only.
Exactly, because I don't want you to sell something and then say, Raj, this is because of you.
Yes.
Okay.
I know that
So
arm short is doing okay.
I'm thinking that it is just a breather at this point of time. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm just a retail investor. But the reason for my thought process is like this. I'm looking at NASDAQ futures right now. Each
Yes.
of these candles is a one-day candle. And we were in this bull channel all along, right from 8th of November 2023. And we have stayed in this range. And right now, NASDAQ futures is still within this range. So I don't feel any reason to be pessimistic that we have started a bear run. I don't think so. Just give me one moment. Let me convert this also into green. Okay, the next point I would say is that in terms of momentum also, there's pretty decent momentum. It's above average. So that also looks good to me. And then if I was to go into the indicators and look at QQQ, the story is still intact with QQQ. We are still within the bull range, which I think we entered somewhere around 3rd of November 2023, and we are still within this range. I would get worried if we were to break down below this diagonal line of support, and in which case I'll assume that 429.59 is going to be a support, and there's a potential that we may bounce back from here and continue a bull channel, but in a inferior channel. Just then this will become a resistance, and we'll have a new line below it, green line for support. So that is something I would anticipate. So there is at least one or two hurdles that the price has to break down before I start feeling negative. And in terms of momentum also, we are above average momentum, even though it is decelerating. Also, the volumes for sale on Friday were quite high.
Oh
But
yeah.
still, I'm not yet convinced that we have begun a bear run. And now, if you look at VIX, VIX is a far cry from 20. I would assume that anything about 20 will make it difficult for us. But right now, we are at around 14.73. So it's not too bad, and it's still following this gentle bull curve, which means that over a period of time, prices may come down, but it's not like it's drastically spiking up and making the markets look bad. And then I have one more indicator that I want to look at, which is basically S&P 500 shares that are above their 50-day average. So while the market dropped, we had the number of S&P 500 companies which are above their 50-day average going up in number. It has gone up to 75.89. So there's a broad participation. Okay. So that seems to indicate that probably what we have here is a one-off, I think, basically the AI story, which was being spearheaded by NVIDIA, has caused the problem. I personally think that NVIDIA had risen steeply, and there was a need to take some profits, because if you see this red line here, this is the red line of resistance on the RSI. So once the RSI hit that spot, many times we have come down. So we did that and we came down. So I'm thinking that after this, we again have a second lease of life. There will be people who are going to buy and it's going to move up again. That's how I would look at it. And because NVIDIA was leading the AI story, it dragged down along with it AMD, and it also dragged down ARM, and it also dragged down Intel. And along with this whole thing, it also dragged down FNGU. Where is FNGU? Because these form part of FNGU, the NVIDIA, and of course it has dragged down the likes of Microsoft and Meta, etc. So that's what happened. And there's an inferior channel out here to support. So even though it has fallen out of this bull channel here, I'm thinking FNGU will be supported out here. So this is my thought process. Sandeep, what do you have?
Okay, so I think that, and the big story is, or a lot of people are thinking, hey, AI run, is it over? And Raj, you had a really good point as to maybe it's taking a breather. And I sort of echo those thoughts.
Okay.
However, I encountered something just a short while ago today, which made me just have to recheck and redo the math over and over again, which has to do with NVIDIA.
Okay.
And what I did was, and as viewers of the show know, we are pretty bullish on NVIDIA. We think it is a revenue monster. It's able to generate cash during a time period where some other companies aren't able to generate cash. But NVIDIA, it's gone up to 900 this week per share, and it was growing EPS at an alarmingly huge rate, which was amazing. But all of that EPS, I believe, got pushed forward and priced in early. EPS grew massively. Again, it was growing at what? Close to 25% at a point. But how much growth is left into your 2024s and beyond, into your 2025s? I did numbers over and over again, and I saw numbers as low as 6%, but I found like a consensus of growth of 9%. So this once very beautiful PEG ratio that we were pricing in NVIDIA at below 2 looks so much more expensive now at above 4, which just makes me think, NVIDIA, you are a revenue machine, and your EPS has grown so massively. Is there any growth left? Wall Street seems to think, yeah, at a much slower pace. So that was alarming and made me think really, really much about NVIDIA. I'm not saying sell. I'm saying consider what's going on in the market. And the market seems to maybe start to have taken a little bit of profits. And we had the news of Broadcom, which reported earnings on Friday. For the people who don't know, Broadcom is a monster of a company that many people have heard of, but it's a second highest weighted semiconductor in both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. So when Broadcom makes a move, all these semiconductors follow. So, and another thing, Raj, you mentioned that where we still have most of the S&P 500 stocks above their 50-day moving average. One thing I did read or listen to just this past week was that we have seen an overrepresentation of those big companies, your Microsofts, your Apples, your Amazons, your big six. And one reason for that is these are cash-wish companies. Google has an abundance of cash. So does Amazon. So does NVIDIA. And because of interest rates being the way they are, they're able to borrow, they're able to lend that money and get a bigger return on that cash, which gives us even better a cash position, where some of the Russell 2000 stocks who are borrowing that money really impacts them. But they're like saying, hey, high interest rates, thank you very much. We're happy with this. What do you think, Raj?
Yeah, I think, I was thinking about your story about NVIDIA, all its growth
Yeah.
has come forward. So I
Mhm.
could agree to a good extent to that, because if you remember the statement of Mark Zuckerberg, he
Yeah.
says he had put a target of how many um, uh, chips he's going to buy from NVIDIA.
Mhm.
We also know that Google is building up infrastructure with NVIDIA chips, and Microsoft is also doing the same.
Mhm.
Amazon is doing the same. And we know that the other competitors do not have as much capacity as NVIDIA. So
Yes.
NVIDIA is going great. But I'm also thinking that there will be a second wave. Once the infrastructure is in place,
Mhm.
I'm just looking at the current model of how ERP systems are delivered. And even for that matter, most of the software is delivered as a service and subscription is taken. So we
Uh-huh.
already see ChatGPT coming in subscription service.
Mm.
And I don't think they have cracked the market wide enough. It's just the early adopters who are already into it.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that we are going to have a second round. First, the basic infrastructure will be in place and take companies like ChatGPT on Microsoft and Google, Gemini, and all those things to a particular level where that product becomes useful and people start depending on it as a co-pilot or AI assistant
Yeah.
in their day-to-day work. Microsoft is already putting that all into Office applications. So once that happens and people start using that, then the subscription for that service at $20 or $25 per month becomes very attractive. And then there is this opportunity to have finance specific AI copilot or medicine specific AI copilot, those kind of things, right? So each one of them would have a particular pricing. So a person may end up having more than one AI application or interface on their computer
Mm.
for their various kinds of works. Now, what does that do? That forces all these companies to beef up their infrastructure further. And now that's where I think the second wave of purchases from these big guys to NVIDIA will come in. And of
Yeah.
course, AMD is not going to sit still. AMD is also going to bring up its chips up to speed and start competing with NVIDIA. And at the same time, what's going to happen is that because the quality has increased, I think corporate users will first find the Microsoft Copilot
Mm.
and the Microsoft Office AI assistant as their first exposure to using AI products. And slowly, the companies themselves will start using AI. And AI could probably threaten other big apps like ERP systems and all, because now you're looking at data in a different manner and you've got the large language learning models, which can be more specific to your company. So those kind of implementations will be asking for more of these chips. And there'll be service providers who will be providing cloud-based services for these companies. So I think the story is not yet over, but
Mm.
because we are retail investors, we do not know what all the analysts have considered in their model when they say that all the growth for NVIDIA has already been priced in and there is very less remaining going forward.
Mhm.
Because apart from this, we also have robotics which are going up off late. I'm seeing a whole lot of articles on upright robots which are doing things. So they also need some processing
Yeah, they do.
capability. It could be on the robot itself, or it could be in the back end. So either way, you need those kind of chips. So I think NVIDIA may still have a lot of steam, and it will be the second wind. Maybe we'll discover it later. But for now, I agree with you.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts has always been that whatever we do for valuation or anything, it's just for us, because it's to satisfy ourselves how much a company is worth before we buy it. But what it actually sells for, the share price depends on so many different people who are
Right,
looking at it in
right.
different ways. So if the analyst who can influence mass opinion think that most of the growth is in place, then that could also explain the weakness for NVIDIA.
And also opportunity costs, where are there other opportunities elsewhere? If not, hey, maybe we'll just go down this path.
Yeah.
And so Raj, if I understand what you're saying, and pardon me if I
Yeah.
misunderstood, you're saying that there could be a second wave of this AI train where
Yeah.
some of the participants that didn't
Yeah.
get as much in the first time around, as it becomes much more widespread and weaker, and not weaker, white and cheaper, and
Yeah.
the infrastructure is in place, some of these smaller players can get in and do well. So maybe even
Yeah.
some smaller caps.
So yeah, so the economics that would apply, I think, is that NVIDIA is having huge profit margins right now
Yeah.
because the demand is much greater than supply.
Oh,
So
yeah.
as the initial demand is satiated to create the initial infrastructure,
Yeah.
then the subsequent usage will start. By that time, NVIDIA will also have to increase its capacity to produce in order to grab as much market share and installed base as possible, because AMD is nipping at its heels, right? And Intel is also trying to capture market.
Yeah,
So when they
yeah.
bring in more capacity, it's not like they snap their finger and the capacity comes. They have to plan in advance, couple of years in advance. So when they do those kind of things, and TSMC also starts working on much more density in its chips for the next generation and all, when
Yeah.
all these things happen, right? In the process, you will come to a situation where there is more chips than the demand that is there. So the chip prices can come down. And when price was a barrier for some people, that price barrier comes down, because we are looking at the moat for NVIDIA. Same way we have the moat for the AI companies also, and
Yeah.
any other company in other industries. So as the price comes down, it becomes more affordable and they take it. Other use cases come out for AI, and they all demand for more AI computing power. So that's what I was
Wait,
thinking.
that kind of may I share something if you don't
Yes,
mind?
please.
That kind of I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. This is FinViz.
Yeah.
Very interactive thing. It shows the S&P 500. You could also do the NASDAQ over here in exchange traded funds, but you could see just in this one day a whole lot of pain in semiconductors.
Yes.
But other areas, other of these kind of smaller areas, they're doing all right, and the S&P 500 is still holding up despite all this pain here. If you
Hey,
go to
and before you go,
yes,
yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one day.
oh, if
One.
you go to the 1 week, where we do see a little pain here and there, Apple, but other areas they're doing all right. Like we can
Yeah.
see my favorite solar sector over here; it's doing
Yeah.
okay, despite some pain in very select areas. So yeah, you're right,
So if
Raj.
you go to one day performance,
Oh yes, one moment, 1 day, and I'll go to S&P. Yes.
yeah. So you see, Apple has not yet announced any AI play, right? Apple is still green, and
Yes.
Google had problem with Bard and other things. So Google was already devalued, so it didn't fall. But the ones that got full benefit of AI, like Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, they have all
Yes.
dropped.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Meta.
So let me share one thing with you and here, and I want to share the NASDAQ
Oh
PE
yes.
ratio.
All
Okay.
right. I
So
love
I'm
this.
looking at 5 years. So if you look at 5-year NASDAQ PE ratio, right now we are at 28.45.
Ooh.
In the past, we have gone all the way up to 29.26
Yeah.
and 28.26 and
And before the pandemic,
27,
like
28. So I think there's a pocket out here which is giving resistance. And
yeah,
maybe
it
we are pushed
seems
down
like
by the resistance and we may go up, because we have been as high as 34.28 in the last 5 years.
Oh my, that's just before pandemic.
Yeah, 34.28, which means that this 28.45 is not that high. If you don't get mesmerized by NVIDIA,
Mhm.
and if you just look at NASDAQ, and this 28.45 includes NVIDIA.
Yeah. Wow. Good job, Raj. Thank you for sharing. This makes you think like, hey, on a longer term, if you zoom out,
Yeah,
makes you really think about what's happened in the past.
yeah, at least that's what I am thinking, right?
Hmm.
We have a P of 28.45 as of closing of Friday.
Yeah.
So it's not that high compared to the past highs that we have been to.
Uh-huh.
So because of all that, I think that we are not yet in the. I don't think this is going to be the beginning of a bear until we drop below this diagonal line of support and below this horizontal line of support.
So it almost seems like we may have seen the big ballooning, big rocket ship of the semiconductor AI plays, and they're taking a breather right now.
Yeah,
But
there's a
they're
bit of
letting,
profit taking.
yeah,
Because I assume that there'll be fund companies and others who have seen huge profits accumulating on one counter, that is NVIDIA,
oh yeah,
and related counters like AMD and ARM, and they decide to take profits. Who
yeah,
can blame them, right? They
yeah.
have their mandates, so
Hmm.
they might sell. And maybe on Monday we'll see a buyback because there's always a dead cat bounce at the very least,
Mhm.
and we'll see what happens on Monday.
Yeah, and it'll give if they take a breather, your NVIDIA's takes a breather, it'll give time for some of these the other companies to catch up.
Sectoral rotation is also possible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Money has to go somewhere.
Yeah. So
It
I
could
think
go into bonds, but it has to go somewhere.
So I think
Hmm.
it's safe to say that, I mean, that at least my opinion is that I'll watch for Monday what happens.
Yes.
And so anything else, Sandeep, or do we end the session?
Yeah, it seems like AI is taking a breather, but the story doesn't seem like it's over yet.
Yeah, it
But
seems like
let's
that.
wait and see.
Because all interest rate cuts are yet to come, right?
Oh yeah.
We still
We
have interest rate cuts to come. And as you mentioned, we're going to have news about CPI next
oh
week.
mm,
That could also cause a little bit of upset here and there. And which is the safest place to go? NVIDIA, because people are still spending.
uh,
NVIDIA is the only one that is generating the cash.
and lending out that cash at
Lending out
a
that
very
cash.
handsome rate.
So okay then, Sandeep, it was an interesting discussion, and
I love
friends,
these.
yeah, we had this chat, and please let us know what you think is going to happen next week. Put it in the
Yeah.
comments. We'll be anxious to hear from you. And that's all from us. And if you are not yet subscribed, please subscribe, and we'll catch up with you in the next video. Bye.
Bye, friendos.